Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a review. This one is for Z-Man's upcoming game called Hadara, which is a civilization-based game that takes only 45 to 60 minutes to play. It's lightning fast.
Yeah, this is one of those streamlined experiences with a lot of layers if you really want to dig into the game, but it's pretty simple to play once you get past those rules.
Let's first talk about what you're seeing here in front of you. The first thing you're going to notice is a modular board. This is broken together by puzzle pieces, and it can be assembled in any way, meaning that the way that you're going to be picking up these cards is going to change depending upon how you set up this board. In the center is going to be a dial. This dial is going to spin clockwise through the course of the game, and there are going to be icons on them that are going to represent one of the 5 different players. And you'll know which player that you are by looking at your player board. On the back side, it's going to show your icon, and then in the upper right-hand corner, it's also going to match that. These are going to point to one of the different stacks of cards that you're going to be placing on top of each of these areas. They're going to house cards, and they're also going to house discarded cards that are directly below it that people will not be using through the course of the game.
Yeah, these cards are going to be things that you're going to be adding to effectively your civilization or your empire throughout the game in a couple of different ways. Like Jeremy just said, that wheel is going to be associated with one of those phases, and the discard piles are actually going to be associated with the other.
Speaking of the cards, there are 3 sets of cards that are broken into 5 different areas. You have each set of cards that represents one of the 3 different epochs. That's because the game is going to be played over 3 epochs. Each one of them is labeled either a 1, a 2, or a 3, and they're stacked for each of the 5 different colors. The front sides of the cards are going to show you how much it costs to buy this card, and then also how many victory points that card may be worth at the end of the game. Plus, it's going to adjust your track through the course of the game. Let's speak about the player boards themselves, because these player boards are incredibly important to the game.
Yeah, there are a lot of things on this player board. The main thing you're going to be looking at, though, are all of these tracks here. They're going to be associated with the 4 main colors in the game. The top one is income, then you have military, culture, and then food. Yes, you're going to have to be feeding your people in this game. The good news is, you're not going to really be losing workers, but you are going to be losing some of those cards.
Across the top is a place for 4 different types of metals. You have places for 2 silver metals, which are die cut. That's important. We'll talk about that in a moment. There's also a place to place 2 of your gold metals. These are going to give you victory points depending upon some set collection. Also, it's going to have a place for 4 different statues. These statues rely very specifically on your availability to build up your culture through the course of the game.
Yeah, and finally, across the bottom, you don't see them, but this is where you're going to be stacking all of your cards. There's one for all the different colors, plus purple, which are going to be a special card, and you're going to stack those below. Those represent effectively not only everything you're adding to your civilization, but kind of the people that you're adding to your civilization.
There's also a number of different tokens and tiles in the game. Each player is going to have a set of 2 of each of the different colored tokens. These are important when placing them into your metals and your statue areas. We'll talk about that in a moment. You have coins. The coins are going to be acquired and used to buy cards that you're placing below your player board. There's also these tiles here that are going to show plus 10. That's important because once you reach 10 on any of these tracks, you're going to be wrapping back and forth through the course of the game. And the final thing that you're going to notice are all the different colony tiles.
Yeah, the colonies are right here across the top of the board. I have one here. These are going to be different values of colonies that you can acquire throughout the game. At the beginning, you're probably going to be only able to acquire these. This requires 3 military. That's that red track on the player board. They progressively get more and more challenging to acquire. All you need to do is have that military in order to acquire these when that time comes.
Those colonies are worth victory points at the end of the game. They can also either be plundered or integrated into your society. We'll talk about when you can do that and why you want to do one of the 2 different options. All right, so the game is extremely simple to play. To set up, you're first going to take all the Epoch 1 cards, shuffle their individual stacks together, so all the reds, purples, and so forth, and then you're going to take 2 cards per the number of players. So in each of these stacks, we have 8 cards. That's because we have 4 players. Then what you're going to do is you're going to give each one of the players one of these cards randomly. This is your starting card. On the cards, you're going to notice that it's double-sided. You have an A and a B side. It's going to tell you how much money you're going to start the game with, what your turn order is for that game, and also you have the option of starting with some different values on each of these tracks. And that's important because maybe you want to have an income strategy, or maybe you may want to have a political strategy. And then you're going to start the game. Each one of the 3 epochs is broken into 2 phases that mostly mirror the previous phase. We'll talk about each of these in order. The very first thing that happens is the first player, whoever has that number 1 marker, is going to set this dial to any direction that they so wish. And they're going to simply spin it and leave it there. Obviously, they have some strategy on why they want to do that, but that's going to allow that player to kind of decide which one of these stacks of cards they're going to draft from first. Then everyone's going to draw cards.
Yeah, what that wheel means is you're going to be looking for your symbol on that wheel, and at the very beginning, you're able to take cards from that stack. So for instance, if I'm the monkey, I would be taking 2 cards from this yellow stack here, and then I'd be looking at these 2. I'm going to be able to use one of them or discard it for money, but then I have to discard the other one just outright into the discard pile right here below that stack.
Each of the cards that you discard is face up. The other card, once everyone has done that, and this is all done simultaneously, once everyone's done choosing which card to keep in their hand, now they have a secondary choice to make. What do they want to do with that card? They can either buy that card by spending coins and placing it below their tableau, or they can just remove it from the game. And when you remove it from the game, that's when you're looking at the back sides of those cards. Every card that you remove from the game in the first epoch, you get 2 coins for, and then 3 in the second epoch and 4 for the fourth epoch. When you buy the card, though, there's a variety of different things that can happen.
Yeah, as we pointed out on these cards earlier, when you buy one, you're going to be placing it below your board. You're going to be spending the money here in this lower left-hand corner for the cost. You're placing it under your board. You're going to get potentially some victory points. Some of the cards don't have some of them do. And then up here at the top, it's going to show you how you can move up on certain tracks. Now, all of the cards are pretty similar across the base colors. The purple cards are also going to have some potential special abilities. Now, there are some purple cards that just let you go up on tracks, but some of them have very unique abilities that really sort of change the game up.
Once everyone has made that choice, the next thing that happens is you're simply going to spin this wheel 1 space clockwise, and you're going to do this again, round after round after round, until all of the cards have been used and discarded. That means that everyone at the table, no matter where you sit, is going to be able to make a decision for each one of these stacks in the game, because there's enough cards for everyone to take 2 cards from each of these stacks. That's why it's important to put 2 cards per player. Then, once everyone is done, you're going to have this nice little tableau built out in front of you. You're going to have some of your levels adjusted. Everyone's going to gain income.
Yeah, income is easy enough. You're going to look at your yellow track, the income track, and collect that money. And I'll tell you right now, money is somewhat tight, kind of. You definitely want it. Let's just put it that way, because the money is going to be spent to acquire all these cards like we just mentioned. And you have a lot of opportunity to spend your money in this game at different parts. You just want to make sure that you keep a hold of that money for when you need it.
After income is taken by all the players, then in turn order, each player has the ability to take one of these colonies that we spoke of previously. If you meet the threshold on one of these tiles, you're allowed to take one of them. If you meet the threshold on multiples, you're still only allowed to take one of them. You just have to make sure your military matches this. If it does, you have an option. You get to make a decision. Do you want to plunder this? And if you do, you simply collect the coins that are in the upper left-hand corner. And again, coins are important. However, you can choose to integrate it. And by integrating, you're spending coins back to the bank. When you integrate, you're actually flipping this tile over and then gaining whatever resources are on the back side by adjusting your track. Again, when you take this tile, you're not allowed to look at the other side. You have to make that decision before you make that choice.
Yeah, this is really cool thematically, I think, because the experience of flipping over that tile truly is like you're exploring new areas and adding them to your colonies if you're integrating them. Again, you can plunder them for the money if you're in a tight spot and you need the money.
Then everyone at the table in turn order once again has the opportunity to carve a statue. What you're looking at here is on the left-hand side of your board in the blue outline, you have space for 4 different statues. These statues have to meet a threshold as well, and that is whatever your culture or blue track is at. For instance, this requires a culture of 6, and if I am able to build a statue, I will get 4 victory points. When you build a statue, you're just looking at that threshold. If you meet it, you have a decision to make again. Which one of these tiles that you start off with do you wish to use? If I use a red tile here, I can simply place it in this area and move my red up 2 spaces. However, I could also flip any one of these tiles over, making those 2 points worth victory points instead. So instead, I would get 6 victory points at the end of the game. So how you use these tiles is another way where you can adjust your track and gain some additional victory points through the course of the game.
Yeah, that culture track is associated with the statues just as much as the red track, the military track, is associated with the colonies. Those are 2 of the main aspects of the game and how you're going to be sort of getting the bigger points available.
Now, you may think that the epoch is over when all of that is done. It is not. In fact, you go into phase 2 of the epoch. This is where all the cards are now depleted from this round area, but you're going to notice all these discards around the outside that people chose not to use. This is where Epoch Phase 2 starts.
Yeah, Phase 2 is interesting. You're going to be looking at those discard piles, just like Jeremy said. The other really cool thing here is you're not limited by that wheel in the center of the board anymore. When it's your turn, you can look at any of the face-up top cards from any of the discard piles and acquire those cards. Now again, you can either acquire it, put it under your board and pay its costs, or you can discard it for the money.
And you're going to keep doing that round after round until all of those discard piles are depleted. Once that is done, each player is going to then go through those exact same steps of income, take a colony, and then possibly build a statue.
And with Phase B, there is 2 more things that you can do, in fact, that you have to do in one case. That is feed your people. We mentioned this earlier. This is that pesky green track at the bottom of your board. You're going to have to be able to have as much food on that track as you have cards below your board. Now, if you don't, you're going to have to lose some of those cards. The good news is you can choose whichever card you want. The bad news is it's going to decrease that track. So if I get rid of a yellow card that had a 2 yellow on it, I'm going to have to go back down on my income track. So it is important to make sure to get that food track up when you can.
Then everyone has the opportunity to buy medals. Medals are going to cost an increasing amount of money as the game proceeds. So in the first epoch, they're cheaper than buying them in the second epoch and the third epoch. These medals are either silver medals that you place here or gold medals that you place here. Let's talk about gold medals first. They're the easiest to talk about. You simply take one of your gold medal tokens and you place it here. The cost is associated on one of your player boards, so you can look up that cost. These are going to give you 7 points for every single one of your sets that you have on the bottom. That means 1 from each of the individual colors. The silver medals work a little bit differently. What you're doing here is you're paying a cost as well, and you're taking one of these colored tokens and placing it in one of these areas. That is saying that at the end of the game, for red, I get half the number of points of wherever I am on this track. And remember, this track is going to loop through the course of the game. So you may have 40 on this track with all the different +10s, getting 20 points, which is half of that value.
Yeah, now remember, the tricky thing with that is those tokens you're using are limited. You have 2 of each color. So when you use one in a silver medal, you're not using one down on a statue and vice versa. So these are a lot of decisions that you're going to have to make throughout the game.
So you guys should know how to play the game now. That was very, very lengthy. Let's actually get into the review because we'll talk about some more of the aspects of the game as we talk about it. Let's start off like we always do with the positives.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about the positives?
Well, this game is super streamlined. While it looks like a very complicated game when you look at all these bits and all these boards and all these numbers in front of you, it's very easy to play mechanically. Once everyone understands that you're basically looking for your icon, taking 2 cards, choosing one, it's nearly as simple as playing something like Seven Wonders, which is a game that for me came to mind as I played this. It obviously doesn't play really anything like that in terms of a draft, but you're basically very simply getting these cards, bringing them over to your tableau potentially, adding them or discarding them for money. In many respects, it feels very similar to me.
It is fast. It is 45 minutes for what they claim is a civilization game, which is really kind of more of an engine building game to it. The one thing I'll say is I like the puzzle aspect of it and that card selection. Like the aspect of drawing 2 cards, every single one of the epochs, and then making a decision with what to discard and then what to do with that card. It constantly engages you over and over and over with making the right decisions for your civilization. So there's never a time in the game where I really felt like there was any downtime. Like I was always doing something every single round.
Well, yeah, it's simultaneous play for sure, which helps that a lot. The other interesting thing about that decision when you're taking those 2 cards is you're not only just deciding about the one card that you want to use, but you are definitely also deciding which card you want to discard. There's some times when I've played this where I've discarded the card that I really want, but I didn't have the money for because I knew there was going to be an income round in between and I was going to save and hopefully get that when it came around. Now that's a risk because when it comes around, it might not be up for grabs. It might not be that top card on that discard stack when you need it. So it is a risk, but there's some interesting decision making for sure there.
There's a lot of ways to score in this game. Like any Euro games, it's a point salad. There's ways to score with all the cards. A majority of the cards are going to give you points. These colonies are going to give you points, more points, in fact, if you integrate them. You have victory points for all of your statues, all of your medals, and there's just a wide variety of ways to score points, giving you the option to kind of approach the game differently each time that you play it.
Yeah, plus, and this is kind of a silly thing to tack on here, but when you look at this game, this is a Euro game through and through, in my opinion, but it's super colorful. Like, this is a beautiful game sitting out on the table. For any Euro player, like I said, some people that are newer to gaming might look at this and go, I'm not so sure. It looks like there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
But if you can get them past that, it's a very appealing game. It's very eye-catching, and it's going to be the kind of thing that people will gravitate towards when they see it sitting out.
Not to mention that every single one of the cards, although they're pretty themeless, so to speak, they all have different pieces of art. So there's over 150 pieces of art that represent all the different tracks that you're trying to play. Do you have anything else positive?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna get into my negatives.
Okay.
This is mostly a themeless game. Yes, they say it's a civilization game, but it is truly an engine building game. Placing the right kind of cards, like the economy cards, the military cards, they're just statistical numbers. There's no real theme to them at all. And that may be fine with most people, but me who loves Civilization, like one of my favorite games of all time is Sid Meier's Civilization, which is truly a thematic civ building game. And this one, you just don't have that, but it doesn't really mean much. Just make sure that when you go into the game, you're not thinking that, oh, this is a civ game where everything matters according to the theme of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would mirror that point, but add to the fact that if you look at this as a civ game, look at it as more of a Seven Wonders type civ game and less of a Sid Meier's civ game. Obviously, that one is a little bit more literal. Seven Wonders, I think, is a fairly good representation of the abstract approach that this also takes to that. You're adding cards that are effectively, you know, when you add a yellow card, it's like a commerce card. It's going to increase your income, those sorts of things. So if you look at it that way, it definitely feels like that type of civ game.
The other thing that I'll mention is that the colonies. I like the aspect of the colonies. I love the fact that it can score you multiple points. However, I never felt the need to plunder these. Like, I always felt if you were very good about managing your money and your income track, you'd always want to integrate these because they always give you the bonuses on these tracks. So 90% of the time when I took these, unless I was in dire need or at the very end of the game where I was just trying to get coins in order to buy some last minute medals, I would always want to integrate them.
So I would agree with that point for sure. If you're going with a colony strategy, you wouldn't be plundering the colonies. Now, however, the colony and the statue strategy can be sort of two different approaches to take. You can go heavy in either, you can do a little bit of both. But I guess I could see potentially someone getting enough on the colony track to plunder a colony just to make a little bit more money, just that much more money, so that they can use it for the statue carving.
Having said all that, the up and down nature of the game where you are constantly buying cards, your income gets depleted, you re-get that income to redo more stuff, it feels like this cool ebb and flow throughout the entire game where you're always making really, really solid decisions. I love the game.
Yeah, no, I really, really like this game.
So MVM approved. This one's called Hadara. It is from Z-Man Games, a 2 to 5 player game that takes 45 to 60 minutes to play. So really, really fast. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and now also follow us on Instagram, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.